I've already made a video about the Shang Dynasty, so make sure to watch it if you haven't. So last we left off, the year was 1600 BC, and Zhou was overthrown by Tang, leading to the creation of the Shang Dynasty. It was around this time that bronze became a common material used by nobility for things like weapons and ritualistic vessels, which were used for worshipping not only their god, Shang Di, but also worshipping their ancestors, since it was believed that while they did live in heaven, they could still influence the mortal realm. And so as the new ruler, Tang went to work, lowering the conscription rate as well as lowering taxes. He spread Shang rule to the east of the Yellow River, to the Di and Qiang tribes, as well as expanding to the south. He established the new capital at a very creatively named town, and built a palace to memorialize the Shang Dynasty he had just conquered. And then a drought happened. And then he died. And then, following a small period where kings either died too young to rule or died very early in their reign, Tang's eldest grandson, Taijia, would become emperor. And the thing about Taijia was that he was a little bitch. He was too dumb to rule, reportedly breaking the laws that his grandfather had put in place.
Dude. Uncool.
And was beginning to look a little bit like another emperor before him. Seeing all of this, a man called Yi Yin, who had been a minister of the realm since Tang revolted against Zhou, banished Taijia to his grandfather's tomb for 3 years in hopes of making him more humble. And when he returned, Taijia was a changed man who never cheated his people until his death. Now, according to Sima Qian, Wuding became emperor, who is called Glossy D, by the way. And during his reign, Yi Yin died, and in his place, Yi Ji became the new prime minister. However, Oracle script bones do not mention him as a leader, so make of that what you will. And after him followed a few rulers who achieved a grand total of 0 remarkable things, which in turn led to the weakening of the Shang's influence. And after them, Tai Wu became emperor. During his reign, a mulberry and a stalk grain grew really tall in only 7 days. And Tai Wu, seeing all this, came to the most logical and obvious conclusion. This was a bad omen, which means the dynasty is about to collapse. So he went to Yiji and asked for advice, and he was essentially told to get his shit together because the dynasty was declining. And after making some changes, both of them withered away. Crisis averted. And then he died. His son became emperor and moved the capital to a place called Ao, near modern-day Zhengzhou. But ever since then, the Shang Dynasty was at a constant decline. Heirs would squabble with each other, child rulers that had no clue how to run a country would reign, and just as many regular rulers would fail to do anything to reverse this downward spiral. It began looking like a repeat of the Shang Dynasty was seeming ever so likely. But this all changed with a new emperor by the name of Wu Ding. Wu Ding had made it his goal to revive the dying Shang Dynasty, and he had just the plan. You see, despite the fact that the Shang was the only actual state at the time, there were still countless small tribes outside of its borders, which could prove very annoying at times. So in order to pacify all of them, Wu Ding had the great idea to marry a woman from each and every single tribe. He had no fewer than 64 wives when his plan was done. Crisis averted. And among those 64 wives, 3 of them stood out to him and became actual queens. Fu Gui, who we know nothing about. Fu Jing, who was in charge of agriculture of the realm as well as being a military commander. And Fu Hao, who was the main military general of the dynasty. Under her command, the Shang would score important victories against many neighboring tribes. After her death, she was buried in the land she owned at the capital of Yin, along with countless bronze weapons and jade ritualistic objects. And even in death, Wu Ding made many sacrifices to her in hopes of assistance against a new enemy that was rising and threatening the Shang, the Gong, which was eventually defeated. After Wu Ding died, a few rulers followed who did absolutely fuck all to help the dynasty, leading to its power weakening slowly over many years. At some point, there was an emperor called Wu Yi, and he was fucking insane. Apparently, he would play a sort of Chinese chess against pieces that represented the gods and were moved by his servants. Whenever the gods lost, he would... I'll just let Sima Qian explain this because I don't think I know how to. He was struck by lightning when hunting near the Yellow River, so I guess that's pretty funny. But during his reign, a vassal state of the Shang, the Zhou, was beginning to grow. While Wu Yi was busy playing chess, a civil war broke out between the heirs of another Shang vassal, the Yiku. The Zhou used this opportunity to go to war with both of them and conquer all of it. And during the reign of Wen Ding, the Zhou was conquering many smaller tribes and states under the leadership of a brilliant king and commander named Jili. And Wen Ding, fearing the Zhou was becoming too powerful, tried to imprison Jili as well as his brothers and his son. He succeeded in capturing Jili and his son, but his brothers fled from the Shang towards the Yangtze River and established the state of Wu. Jili was executed, but his son, Wen, managed to bribe his way out of prison and return as king of the Zhou. In the year 1075 BC, Dixin became emperor, and he was said to have been a smart and strong ruler at first. But later he turned into another emperor you might have heard of. Apparently, he ordered a large lake of wine in which small canoes could sail in, as well as a small island which had trees with skewers for branches on whom meat could be hung, for eating while sailing in the pool. And he would also host these massive during whom he would stick his dick in more than he had concubines until he and his eventually and all of this costed quite a bit, so in order to fund it, he imposed heavy taxes. Now, what I just told you sounds comically evil, and that's because it most likely was fake propaganda against the Shang made by the Zhou in order to legitimize their claim to the throne, since the Shang had clearly lost the mandate of heaven. And while all of this was happening, Wen was plotting to conquer the Shang. Once Dixin got suspicious, he imprisoned Wen, but he was once again able to leave after some pleading from other nobles of the realm who considered him just. And after escaping death for the second time, Wen began strengthening the Zhou by making a brilliant man called Zhang Zia his military commander and going on many conquests to gain allies and more land. However, just before he could begin his invasion, he died, leaving it to his son Wu to finish what he started. So in 1050 BC, after notifying Zhang Zia and his allies, Wu began marching with his army of 52,000 men down the Yellow River heading to the Shang capital of Yin. Upon hearing this, Dixin sent an army of 530,000 men to meet him on the field, as well as arming 170,000 slaves to have them guard the capital. Sima Qian may have been hanging out with Herodotus too much, because modern estimates place Dixin's army at around 70,000 men instead. In 1046 BC, Wu met Dixin's army at Muye, and so the battle began. During the battle, all the slaves defected, joining Wu, and many Shang soldiers either didn't want to fight or also defected to the Zhou. In the end, Wu managed to break the center of the army with a charge and win the battle. Dixin fled and went up to his palace by the alcohol lake, wore his best clothes and jewelry, and lit that bitch up, killing himself and burning his entire palace to the ground. Wu entered the capital of Yin as the new emperor of a new dynasty, marking the end of the Shang Dynasty and the creation of the Zhou Dynasty. Thank you for watching. See you soon.